Daniela came to the US from Mexico when she was 4 years old. She has never lived anywhere else. She grew up here, graduated here. She has DACA. She has renewed it on time every single cycle, done everything right. Then she reads about a federal court ruling from April 2026 that changed what DACA can actually protect her from. And she has no idea what it means for her. DACA still exists, but the legal protections it provided in removal proceedings have been quietly narrowed. And there's a window to act before that gap becomes something much more difficult to close. DACA has never been secure. Since 2017, it has been challenged in federal court, blocked by injunctions, partially reinstated, and challenged again. But for years, one thing held. If you had DACA and you ended up in removal proceedings, your DACA status gave immigration judges a strong basis to close the case. That protection kept a lot of people out of serious legal jeopardy, even when enforcement pressure was high. That changed on April 24th, 2026. The Board of Immigration Appeals, the federal court that oversees immigration judges across the country, issued a ruling in a case called Matter of Santiago Santiago. The ruling said that DACA status alone is no longer a sufficient basis for an immigration judge to terminate removal proceedings. Before this ruling, judges could close a case simply because the person had DACA. After it, judges must weigh the government's reasons for pursuing the case. DACA is still a factor in those proceedings. It is just no longer an automatic stop. What does that mean in practice? It means that if ICE initiates removal proceedings against a DACA recipient, or if something in that person's history draws enforcement action, DACA no longer guarantees that case gets dropped. Immigration judges have to look at the full picture. That shift is real, and the consequences are real. This year, more than 260 DACA recipients were arrested by ICE. Approximately 174 were deported. Those are not large numbers relative to the roughly 500,000 active DACA recipients in the country right now. But the trend is moving in the wrong direction, and the legal landscape just became more permissive towards enforcement. If your DACA is coming up for renewal, do not wait. USCIS recommends filing for renewal between 120 and 150 days before your current status expires. That is 4 to 5 months out. Not 2 months, not a few weeks before, 4 or 5 months. If you file late and your DACA lapses while the renewal is pending, you can face a gap in both your work authorization and your deportation protection. In the current enforcement climate, the gap matters. And for DACA recipients in Texas, there's an additional layer. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in January 2025 that the work authorization component of DACA is unlawful, and that ruling applies specifically to Texas. The case is back before a federal district judge who will determine how and when that work authorization ends for Texas recipients. That order has not come down yet, but it is coming. If you are in Texas and your work authorization is expiring, talk to an attorney specifically about what is happening in that state right now. I want to ask something of the people watching this. What is your biggest uncertainty about DACA right now? Drop it in the comments. I read them, and I want to make sure the topics I cover actually match what you are dealing with. Now, let me talk about what you can actually do, because that is the part that gets left out of most DACA coverage. DACA was always temporary. It was never a path to a green card. The dreamers who are in the strongest position right now are the ones who used those years to build a life that opened other legal doors. If you're married to a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, that pathway may be available to you. How you originally entered the U.S. matters. Entry without inspection creates different complications than entry on a visa. But this is worth a real conversation with an attorney who knows your full situation, because it is among the first things to look at. If you work in a specialized field and your employer is willing to sponsor you, Employment-based visa categories can serve as a bridge towards more permanent status. It is a longer process, and not every employer is willing to undertake it. But for some people, it is the most realistic option available. I came to this country myself through a path that required proving I belonged here. I know what it feels like to depend on paperwork. The most dangerous thing you can do right now is wait for Congress to fix DACA. They have had 13 years to do so. What you can do is understand your actual options and act on them while there's still time. If you are a DACA recipient and you want to understand what happens when immigration protection expires or gets terminated and what options exist in that space, I made a video about what happens when TPS expires that covers a lot of the same territory. Watch that one next. And if you want to talk through your specific DACA situation with an attorney, our contact information is in the description.